Thunder rattled the old mansion. Rain lashed against the windows, a relentless assault. The storm had been brewing for hours, its fury growing with each passing minute. The sky was a canvas of dark, swirling clouds, illuminated sporadically by jagged streaks of lightning. The wind howled like a beast unleashed, shaking the very foundations of Carrington Manor. Inside, Carrington Manor was a tableau of shadows and flickering gaslight. The once grand and opulent rooms now seemed haunted, filled with eerie shadows that danced with each flicker of the gaslight. The air was thick with tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for something dreadful to unfold. A scream, sharp and sudden, pierced the storm's roar. It was a sound of pure terror, echoing through the halls and mingling with the cacophony of the storm. The scream seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a chilling cry that sent shivers down the spine. It was a sound abruptly cut short, swallowed by the wind howling down the chimney. The storm outside seemed to grow even more ferocious, as if it were feeding on the fear and chaos within the manor. The wind roared through the chimney, drowning out any other sounds, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Eliza Carrington, mistress of the manor, lay sprawled on the Persian rug, her eyes forever fixed on the storm-ridden night beyond the window, her once vibrant presence now reduced to a lifeless form, a tragic figure in a scene of utter desolation. The storm raged on, indifferent to the life it had claimed. A single crimson stain bloomed on her white gown, a stark contrast to the fury outside. The blood, vivid and fresh, told a story of violence and despair. It was a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded, a grim reminder of the life that had been so cruelly taken. Detective Evelyn Grace, a woman whose steely gaze was as sharp as the storm itself, arrived at the manor. The night was dark and stormy, the wind howling through the trees, as if nature itself was warning her of the secrets that lay within. Her trench coat flapped in the wind, and her eyes, cold and calculating, took in every detail of the grand, yet foreboding structure before her. Her arrival was an unwelcome intrusion into the tableau of grief and suspicion that had settled over the mansion's inhabitants. The air inside was thick with tension, the kind that made every breath feel heavy. The family and friends gathered in the dimly lit rooms, their faces a mix of sorrow and unease, as if the walls themselves whispered of the secrets they held. Each face held a secret, each eye a question. The flickering candlelight cast shadows that danced across their features, revealing glimpses of hidden emotions. Whispers filled the air, hushed conversations that ceased the moment Evelyn entered the room, her presence commanding silence and attention. There was Charles, Eliza's stoic brother, his face etched with grief. Or was it guilt? His eyes, red-rimmed and weary, avoided Evelyn's piercing gaze. He stood apart from the others, his posture rigid, as if bracing himself for an accusation that had yet to be spoken. Madeline, Eliza's childhood friend, her beauty marred by a strange anxiety. She wrung her hands nervously, her eyes darting around the room, never settling on one spot for too long. Her voice, when she spoke, was a whisper, trembling with an unspoken fear that seemed to cling to her like a shadow. And then there was Edward, the young, ambitious nephew, his eyes darting nervously around the room. His ambition was well known. and it was clear that he was uncomfortable under Evelyn's scrutiny. He shifted from foot to foot, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his jacket, as if trying to hide something that only he knew. Evelyn Grace began her investigation, her keen eyes missing nothing. The mansion, with its darkened corners and whispering corridors, seemed to hold its breath, guarding its secrets. Charles, she learned, had been embroiled in a bitter feud with his sister over the inheritance. Madeline, she discovered, harboured a long-standing resentment towards Eliza, a simmering jealousy masked as friendship. And Edward, drowning in debt, stood to gain considerably from his aunt's untimely demise. The storm raged on outside, mirroring the turmoil within the mansion's walls. Evelyn's fingers, cool and methodical, sifted through Eliza's belongings. A crumpled letter, tucked away in a book of poetry, caught her eye. It was from Eliza to an unknown recipient, a confession of fear, a plea for help. Someone, it seemed, had been threatening Eliza, someone who knew her darkest secrets. The letter mentioned a shadow from the past, a sin buried deep. Evelyn's gaze swept over the assembled mourners, each face a mask hiding a potential killer. The investigation deepened, the tension in the mansion thickening like the smoke from the fire. Each room held secrets, and every shadow seemed to whisper of past horrors. The air was heavy, not just with smoke, but with the weight of unspoken truths and hidden dangers. As Evelyn pieced together the fragments of Eliza's life, she stumbled upon a truth too dangerous to ignore. The photographs, letters, and old journals painted a picture of a life intertwined with mystery and peril. Each discovery brought her closer to a revelation that could change everything. The killer, threatened by her investigation, struck again. This time, the attack was more brutal, more desperate. The shadowy figure moved with a deadly precision, determined to silence anyone who got too close to the truth.
A struggle, a gasp, and then silence. The room, once filled with the sounds of conflict, now echoed with an eerie stillness. The fear was palpable, hanging in the air like a dark cloud.
But when the lights flickered back on, it wasn't Detective Grace who lay still on the floor, but Madeline, her eyes wide with terror. A single playing card, the Queen of Spades, clutched in her hand. The card, a chilling symbol, hinted at a deeper game being played, one where the stakes were life and death. The room, now a crime scene, held its breath as the investigation took a darker turn.
The room was silent, shock etched on every face. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, Charles Carrington, his face pale, his eyes filled with a chilling resolve. The game, he declared, was over.
The letter, he confessed, was his doing, a desperate attempt to lure Eliza's attacker into the open. He had suspected Madeline all along, her jealousy a venomous serpent coiled around their lives. The attack on Evelyn, he admitted, had been a desperate act of self-preservation, a gamble that had gone wrong. The storm outside had subsided, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. Justice, it seemed, had been served. But as Charles was led away, his confession echoing in her ears, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The pieces of the puzzle, though seemingly fitting, formed a picture that wasn't quite clear. The weight of truth, she realized, was often heavier than the burden of lies. Carrington Manor stood silent, the storm a distant memory. Evelyn Grace, however, knew that some storms never truly end, they merely transform. As she looked back at the imposing facade, she couldn't shake the feeling that the mansion held its secrets close, whispering them to the wind. The truth, she knew, lay buried deep, guarded by the shadows of the past. Evelyn Grace walked away from Carrington Manor, her footsteps echoing in the morning stillness. The case was closed, but some questions remained unanswered. The secrets of Carrington Manor, she realized, ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. And in the silence that followed the storm, she could almost hear the whispers of the past, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved.